Welcome to the Real Estate Way to Wealth and Freedom podcast with Jacob Ayers, providing actionable content to help you along your journey to financial freedom through real estate investing. As the premier asset class, real estate has helped ordinary people just like you amass fortunes. The benefits of passive income from real estate investing will allow you to live a life you want. And now your host, entrepreneur, real estate investor, and apartment deal syndicator, Jacob Ayers.
Welcome to the Real Estate Way to Wealth and Freedom podcast, episode 87. I'm your host, Jacob Ayers. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in to yet another episode. I think you're really going to enjoy today's guest. His name is Dr. Matt Motil. Before ever getting started investing in real estate, Dr. Matt spent 17 years as a project manager and a licensed engineer in the construction industry, building bridges, highways, and industrial plants across the United States. During his spare time, he teaches college courses as an adjunct professor at a handful of colleges and universities. Since then, Dr. Matt has turned his attention to building passive income through his real estate portfolio and teaching others how to do the same. I'm really excited to bring on Dr. Matt, so without further ado, let's jump into the episode. All right, today I welcome on the show Dr. Matt Motil. Matt, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Hey, it's our pleasure. Well, Matt, could you tell the audience a little bit about yourself and how you got started investing in real estate?
Sure. So I grew up in middle-class America. I from the Midwest, and growing up in the 80s and 90s, education was the only option that we had, right? So if you wanted to be something, you had to go to college. And when I was in college, I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And that was I opened my eyes to there's lots of other options out there besides just being an employee forever. And that kind of sparked my interest in real estate investing. But it's a really good mindset book. It's not a good how-to book. And I really had no idea how to get into it. And so I really kind of thought that I needed to leverage my job and my career and things of that nature to make it happen. And so I kind of limped into it over the course of about 15 years. But over that time, building up a real estate portfolio to the point where I was able to replace my active income from my W-2 job with my passive income from my rental portfolio to where in 2015, I fired my boss forever. And now we've been doing real estate full time. We help other people get into rental properties in our market here in Cleveland, Ohio. And then we've just recently started education on info courses and stuff to help people do the same thing that we're doing as well.
Yeah, awesome, Matt. Well, it sounds like you, like many listeners out there, kind of grew up with that blueprint to, go to school, get a good education so you can get into a university and further that education and get a good paying day job. And that's kind of the blueprint even myself, along with many people out there, were kind of born and raised with. So you did that and, you got this degree and, all these credentials, and then you kind of realized it wasn't really your path to success. So what did that transition look like? Because you spent much of your life, in this formal education kind of sphere, educating yourself and going about this formal process. And then at some point you kind of have to get away from that. So what did that look like for you?
Yeah, it's interesting because the thought process that you described is really what we still to this day sell in our society as the American dream. It's Go to school, get good grades so you can buy a house, have 2.5 kids, leverage yourself in debt to make everybody think that you're successful. And the reality is that's what I call the middle class trap, because the reality is that the wealthy in the world are not employees, and we need employees. We need A players, we need B players, we need C players, because somebody's got to do the C player stuff, right? But the thing is, when you achieve that quote unquote American dream, then you realize that you're really just, helping somebody else live their dream, and it's really a nightmare for you. And I'm not bashing it for anybody that loves their job, loves what they do, and is perfectly happy working for the next until retirement age and then retiring with the gold watch and the pension or the retirement plan or whatever it is. That's just not for me. And I'm sure that your listeners are thinking the same thing. Like, this isn't for me either. The thing was, I was struggling because I felt like I knew there was this momentum out there that I had tastes of over the course of my life. And I was struggling to figure out, how do I get that back? How do I make that full time? How do I really feel like I'm in full momentum? And the thing was, every time I got bored at work, or every time I felt like I was stagnant in my career, I felt like more education was the answer. So I wanted to be in management. So I was like, well, I need to go get an MBA. And then I wanted to separate myself from those people that had an engineering degree versus those people that were actually licensed as an engineer. So I studied and took the exams and all that kind of stuff and got licensed. So it was always, the answer was, anytime I was bored or I felt like my career had stalled out, it was like the answer was more credentials, more education. And the thing was, at some point in time, I became so credentialed and so educated that it was like, okay, this is kind of ridiculous. Like, if I literally put all the letters after my name for all the credentials that I have, it would look like the entire alphabet. And then I achieved a terminal degree with a doctorate. And then it was like, okay, now what? I'm still not satisfied. I'm still not fulfilled. And when I realized that I needed to do my own thing, I needed to take the entrepreneur route instead of the employee route, there were a lot of people in my life that were like, you're throwing away a career that you spent 18 years building. You went to school, you got a doctorate, and you're going to walk away from all that. So there was a lot of people in my life that were saying, don't do this. You're going to ruin your life. Don't do this. You're throwing it all away. And a lot of those same people now are going, I'm glad you didn't listen to us. But it was hard. Because the thing is, it's kind of like the force of average. The people in your life don't want to see you level up sometimes because that's scary for them. It forces them to look at their own life and say, should I be doing more? Should I be more? And it's kind of like the crab mentality. If you cook crabs, all you got to do is throw two in a pot, because they'll just keep, as soon as one starts to climb out, the other one's going to pull it back in, and they'll just cook themselves to death. And so it's the same mentality with life and society. We want everybody in our sphere, we want them to be not a whole lot better than us. Otherwise, it makes us feel inadequate.
Sure.
So it's hard because you got to get over that.
Yeah.
But it was a hard transition to get past all of the people that were telling you, don't do this.
So Matt, just to kind of recap there, you would kind of get stagnant in a place or time in your career and think the solution was more education, more credentials, just, furthering your formal career path. And that's great. Right. It works for a lot of people. But at an eventual point, you got to a now what point. And for me and lots of people out there, we didn't have to quite go that far to, PhD and all these certifications, maybe just a bachelor's degree, or for some, not even that. But, you got to this point of now what? And I've been there, and it's like, there's more out there. You've got this momentum you speak of, and, there's something else left, something you want to do. And, maybe just climbing that corporate ladder, getting another degree, or, staying late at work isn't the answer. What did that look like for you when you kind of really switched gears and kind of did a 180 on your career path and started doing stuff outside of your engineering career?
Well, so I had always known that I wanted to somehow get into real estate. And like I said earlier, I thought that I had to leverage my career. I didn't understand that you could do real estate without any of your own money. I didn't know that you could, that you didn't need to go to a bank and get a loan, that kind of thing. So just being very naive, I just figured, okay, I got to work hard so I can make good money, so I can put the 25% down to get an investor loan and take deals down that way. And so we started growing a portfolio, but it was very, very slow. And really the way we started out doing it was house hacking. So we would buy a house to live in that needed work. We'd fix it up, move out, and turn it into a rental. It's a great way to start, but it's not a fast way to start. And I don't know that everybody should start fast, because fast sometimes is not safe. But the interesting thing is, when you talk about transition, I was kind of forced into the decision. I think everybody sits there and goes, okay, I want to give up my main hustle and I want to make my side hustle my main hustle. And for real estate investors, if you've got a career, if you've got a degree and you've got a career, eventually you have this vision of grandeur of, I'm going to own enough rental property to where my passive income is going to allow me to live the lifestyle I want to live, with my toes in the sand, with a margarita in my hand.
Sure.
And my checks are going to come in every month. My PM's going to take care of my stuff. And I can just live this dream lifestyle basically on retirement at 35 or 40 or whatever, however old you are when you decide that that's what your plan is. For me, and I think when we make these plans, we go, okay, I'll pull the trigger when I've got X amount of dollars in the bank, or I've got this many properties, or my cash flow is this much money a month. And for me, we had gotten to the point where our passive income was about where we needed it to be. And I was definitely feeling like I wanted to ramp it up. And I was in a job I had just switched over from being a consultant back to being a contractor again. And it was not a good fit with this new company. And I didn't last very long. And on New Year's Eve, I was canned. So I was fired. So I was brought into the owner's office on New Year's Eve.
Oh, no.
And basically told, hey, we're not going to have you come back after the holiday. And I was like, okay. And I was working about an hour from the house. And so I drove home. And it was really funny because I woke up that morning and I left for work and I told my wife, I said, you know what? I think today's my last day. And my wife's like, shut up. And I'm like, no, really. I just have this weird feeling because it was a Friday. And I told her, I said, who has anybody come in on a holiday weekend on a Friday in the wintertime in construction in Ohio? Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. So sure enough, I got to work and I was like one of the only people that was in the office. And I thought, yep, I was right. I mean, there's nobody here. They had me come in. They didn't tell me to stay home. And I'm the only one here. And so ironically, I started cleaning out my desk. Without anybody even talking to me. I just started packing my car and just cleaning out my desk, taking all my books off my bookshelf, because as a project manager and engineer, so I got a bunch of reference manuals and things of that nature that were mine. So I just started loading my car. And then at about 10 a.m., in the construction, we start early. So I'd been there for about 3 hours. And about 10 o'clock, the nephew of the owner, who was kind of like the HR guy, he comes into my area and he looks around like thinking, where's all your stuff? And he goes, where's all your stuff, dude? And I looked at him and I said, does it really matter? And he goes, I guess not. You got a couple of minutes? We can go talk to Bill. And I'm like, sure. So I walked into the office and they shut the door and they're like, we don't think this is working out. And I said, yeah, I don't think so either. And so they handed me my check and I got in the car and I headed home and I called my wife and I said, hey, I was right. And she goes, are you kidding me? And I said, no. And she goes, what are we going to do? And I said, well, I don't think I'm going back to work. And she goes, what do you mean? And I said, you know what? I just think it's time. I think it's time. I think the universe is telling me that it's time to pull the trigger. And she goes, well, I don't think we're ready. And I said, I don't really care. I think we just need to figure it out. And I look back on that and I go, had I never left, because the job I was at I was working as a consultant for a big construction management company. And the job was really easy compared to being a contractor. And the pay was nice. And I left that because I was chasing this golden carrot that a recruiter had dangled in front of my face. And I look back at that and I go, I wonder if I had never left that consultant job, if I would still be there. And going to that contractor was miserable, but it was great because when it ended abruptly like that, it was like, our passive income was enough to cover like necessities. So we weren't living this like crazy lifestyle, but between my wife's job at the time, she was a nurse. Now she's a nurse practitioner. She went back to school and stuff and finished her degree. But so she was a nurse and she was working, doing that. And then with the passive income, it was like, hey, we can survive. We can make it work. So let's figure it out. We struggled, and it wasn't until we kind of got traction where things took off for us. But there was definitely a transition for sure.
Yeah, well, Matt, it sounds like you were fortunate enough to maybe see the writing on the walls when that was coming, but even more so importantly, you were prepared that you had, some passive income from your rental portfolio already established. So really made that New Year's resolution kick off strong, it sounds, and then you were just off to a whole new start. So what did that look like for you when you'd really just kind of decided to go full steam ahead into this real estate investing thing?
Well, it's interesting because I had already signed up to take real estate classes to get licensed in real estate, to be an agent. Yeah. And I was going to do it on nights and weekends. So I was starting in January. So that weekend, when we were kind of sitting down making a plan of what we were going to do, I said, you know what? Why don't I switch my licensing classes to full time? And I'll just take the first couple of weeks of January. I'll get licensed. And then if we need some extra cash or whatever, I could sell houses. Very naive, again, of thinking like, oh, well, you just get your real estate license and deals just fall into your lap out of the sky and you just go sell a house if you need some extra cash.
Sure, easy enough.
Yeah, right. And no big deal. And I think a lot of people that get into real estate, on the retail side, just believe that, well, I go to school and once I get licensed and I hang my license with a broker, like bing, bang, boom, I make 6 figures a year and I don't have to work very hard. What's interesting was I only wanted my license so that I didn't need to rely on realtors because we were using the MLS a lot, or we were finding deals like on market deals that made sense. And we're in relatively inexpensive markets. So you can find good returns on deals just off of the MLS in our market here. And so I thought, I was tired of waiting for agents to get back to me. I was tired of excuses and things of that nature. And I said, I'm just going to go get licensed. That way I have MLS access. If I want to, if something hits the market and it's vacant and it's 11 o'clock at night and I want to go see it, I can go see it. And so my thought was, I'm just going to do this so that I can beef up my buy and hold game because that's really what we were doing. We were buying rentals and holding them, and that was all we were doing. And so I went down that path of thinking this is just going to help my investment. Once I got licensed, I realized that without any marketing, you aren't going to sell any houses. And so I was like, well, okay, so this side hustle of being a realtor requires some work. So let me put some effort into that. And so I took my eye off the ball of in the investor side to try the retail market, and relatively quickly realized that I hated that. I didn't want to work with buyers and sellers. Buyers were awful. Sellers weren't as bad, but then I realized pretty quickly that sellers sucked too. And kind of came back full circle to the investing side. And it was like, and I think that's kind of the entrepreneurial shuffle, as we call it, right? Like you try it, it doesn't work. You try this, it doesn't work. You try that, it doesn't work.
Right.
And then all of a sudden you try something and you get traction and it takes off and you go, okay, great. And then everyone goes, wow, you're an overnight success. And it's like, yeah, except you didn't see all of these things that I tried that were just complete disasters in the process of getting to here. So when we really kind of got back to it, we were looking for deals that we could buy and hold. And the problem was we really got to the point where we were doing such a great job of finding these deals that we couldn't do them all. And so then, and just networking with other investors, I had guys that were like, well, I'd do that deal. I'm like, really? And then, kind of fell into the wholesaling side of real estate investing. And then pretty quick, it was like, whoa, you can make some decent money wholesaling real estate. This is an eye opener. And, because we were using flipping to generate cash to do, to buy our rentals at that point. And it was like, wow, I can get a lot more bang for my buck and time wholesaling contracts instead of even flipping houses. And so we kind of transitioned into that. And then the business took off from there, because it realized really quickly, like, how do I scale this? Well, I've got to build a team. Well, how do I do that? The interesting thing for me was here I am with a PhD in business, right?
Right.
I'm teaching college class, so my last year, well, actually the year that I left industry, I was still teaching college. So I'm teaching classes, I'm teaching business classes, I'm teaching construction management courses. I don't know how to start a business. Like, I don't know how to start one. And I'm thinking to myself, like, this is some irony here. Like, I have a PhD in business. So if anyone should be able to start and have a successful business, it should be me, Dr. Business. And I don't know what I'm doing. I had been in middle management. I had been in really not upper management, but I had been in I was a senior project manager. So I had other PMs that worked for me. And it was like, I'm good at that, but I'm not good at okay, I'm a solopreneur. Now, how do I take this to the next level? How do I scale this operation? What do I do? And it was a lot of trial and error to figure out, okay, how do I take this to the next level and create something that really kind of runs without me? And we're not there yet, but we're getting there. We're getting closer. So, but that's the goal.
Yeah, well, interesting point there you made, Matt. And that is, you had this PhD in essentially business, but you really didn't know how to start a business from the ground up and just, get one going. It kind of shows the irony of the formal education system there, and that, you're taught all of these years, all of these things, and you're highly educated, but almost not so much on practical matters such as starting this business, right? So it really shows the gap in, the education system, especially here in the US for those listeners abroad, what we deal with here. So interesting points.
Well, I think the thing is, and here's because I've thought about this a lot.
Sure.
And I actually there was a book that we published last year. I had 3 books come out last year. One is the one we give away for free on the website called Man on Fire, which is my story of basically transitioning from employee to business owner and using real estate to do that. And we give that away for free. We just ask you to throw couple bucks our way for shipping. But the other 2 that we did, one was on like entrepreneurs who are parents. I wrote a chapter in that. And then this other one was actually a peer-reviewed academic book on entrepreneurship. And I was the only one. So everybody that was invited to write a chapter in this book were all business owners. They are all doctors. But I'm the only one that at the time was not actively teaching in higher education. So I looked at this as an opportunity to basically take the gloves off and go do some rounds with the bureaucracy of higher ed.
There you go.
And so my chapter is really kind of the concept of the higher education system is pushing the agenda of basically keeping middle-class America in employee mode. We're a capitalistic society, but we really don't want people to be capitalists when you really look at it. the general population needs to be employees for the machine to continue to run the way that it does. And so it does make sense when you look at it through that lens to realize that it doesn't make any sense for us to go to college and learn how to start a business. We want you to go to college so that you can take out massive student loans and then go get a job. And we want to teach you how to be a really good employee. And that's what we do in higher ed. And that's why I stopped teaching. So I don't actively teach. I haven't taught since 2016. And that was the reason why, is because I said, I'm proliferating the BS system and I'm not going to be part of it. So now I actually do the opposite, which is, hey, here I am. Up till a couple of years ago, you could have paid lots of money to sit in my classroom and have me teach you things and earn a degree. Now you can pay me way less and I'll teach you something that you can practically apply to your life that's going to do a lot of good. And I have the actual real world experience at this point to back it up and say, look, I had to learn this the hard way. You don't have to do that, but we don't teach it. I mean, you can actually go to school these days and take entrepreneurship, which is kind of a joke in my opinion, but you can't. And they're going to teach you some SBA type stuff that small business type things that
Sure.
of how to start up and things of that nature. But the reality is, a lot of it is you got to get out in the world. You got to get your hands dirty and you got to learn on the fly and then be able to go back and fall back on that theory and say, okay, I remember that we were talking about this and this time would come and here I am. And so it's nice to have that foundational theory, but until you go out and actually get in the field and start putting it into action, it doesn't really mean anything and you're not really going to fully understand.
Yeah, no doubt, Matt, that our education system does teach, people how to become employees and, kind of drives them towards the middle class, which brings up this burning question I've had all interview and a great transition into is how does one break out of the middle class?
Yeah, it is a great question. That's really what we're trying to do is to say, and because I've coined this, the middle class trap. You are forced down this path because that's what society tells us we're supposed to do to achieve the American dream. And the reality is, and here's where I was stuck in this job that I hated. I was stuck in a career that in an industry that I didn't like. And the problem was I was making a lot of money. I was making, over $100,000 a year. And in the Midwest, making that, the average household income still in America is $59,000. That's the household income average.
Right.
And so I was making double that, just me. And you wake up and you go, I want to do something different. It doesn't matter what it is. Just insert anything else you want to do. I want to be an artist. I want to be a musician. I want to start a real estate investing company, whatever it would be. And you go, okay, how do I do that without making massive sacrifices in my personal life? Because I have a massive mortgage. I got this monster house. I've got a couple cars that I'm paying on. I've got tons of student loans. Most likely you've got some kind of credit card debt. You've probably got medical bills, all that kind of stuff. And here you are buried in debt. And you go, okay, the only way I'm going to be able to make a transition away from what I'm doing right now is I've got to go into something that's going to pay me equal to what I'm making now. And what I realized for me personally was I couldn't shift industries because shifting industries meant basically starting over again and, an entry level salary type thing. And I'm going, I make $125,000 a year salary. I can't start over and make 40, 50,000 because I've got bills that requires me to make this much money. The thing is, and this is where it's really hard, and this is where a lot of people are going to either tune out or they're going to give up or they're going to quit, is when you realize that you need to make major sacrifices. Because looking back on it, could I have sold my house and moved? Yeah.
Sure.
But that didn't seem like an option, right? Could I have gotten rid of the cars and gone and bought something in cash for a couple $1,000s? Sure. But the thing is, we're so hardwired that we've got to have this stuff that you almost feel like I can't let go of it. The other thing for me too was at the time I was married and I had kids. When I realized I want out of this trap, I didn't want to feel like I was letting my family down. I was mentally in this place where I thought, well, I could downsize my life, but then it was I don't want my wife to be disappointed. I don't want my kids to be disappointed. The reality is that's stupid. If these people love you and support you and they understand the goal, and it really comes down to communication. I was a horrible communicator. That's still something I work on in my marriage now. I mean, that relationship ended. I was divorced. I ended up getting remarried. And I tried to be a much better communicator, definitely with my goals and what I'm trying to do and things of that nature, so that everybody's on the same page And when everybody's on the same page, it's like, well, we all have the same vision of where we're going. We've all got goals of where we're going. And as long as everybody's like, yep, that's what we're doing, then everybody can get behind what needs to happen. So the action that needs to happen to make that happen. And if people aren't supportive of the actions that need to take place, then you're really not on the same page. And you got to go back and make sure that everybody's on the same page to understand, like, okay, look, if this is the goal, we have to have actionable steps to get us there. What does that look like?
Yeah, right. Well, a lot of the stuff you're saying, Matt, it kind of goes back to, just developing that mindset, working on that, kind of abundance mentality. Like you're saying, you could have done these things to shrink down and, reduce your, cost of living to, accommodate what you were going through. But that's one way to handle it. Or you can kind of look on the upside, grow your means, kind of expand your means, develop this almost abundance mindset to take you to where you're going. So
it's interesting because here's what happened to me. What happened to me was I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, I can't give up all of this stuff. I can't give up what I've worked for. I think it's a psychological thing where you go, I went to school, I spent a bunch of money, I got this degree. It was a lot of work. It was a lot of time. It was a lot of money. It was a lot of effort. And I achieved this. And so I can't walk away from it because I spent a bunch of time doing this. And I feel like if I walk away, it's a waste. So that's the first thing. Second thing is because of all that, I've got this stuff. And there's that saying that we don't own our stuff. Eventually our stuff owns us.
Right.
And that was exactly where I was at. But here's the deal. So fast forward a little bit, I get cancer and I then have surgery where like way more involved than everybody thought it was going to be and all that kind of stuff. And in the transition, I realized, and in the recovery, I realized like life is really short and we don't know how long we have. And what I realized was like, why am I putting up with all this crap in my life? I was in a toxic relationship. I was in a toxic job. And I was like, I need to make a change. I ended up getting divorced. And in the process of doing that, I literally lost everything. I couldn't afford to live in the house I was living in anymore. So I was forced to move out and I was forced to rent it out. I was broke and my credit was trashed because of the divorce process. And here I was, and I had this realization that it was like, I was holding on so desperately to all of this stuff that I thought that I needed to hold on to for whatever psychological reason. And here I am sitting here now completely broke and I don't have any of it anymore. And the reality was it wasn't that bad. And I was like, wait a minute. Here I was clawing and scratching, struggling, trying to maintain when the reality was here I sit now having basically lost it all and it's not the end of the world. And I remember looking back and going, man, I just wish I would have given it up because I could have gotten to this point a whole lot faster. And that's kind of this like theme that I keep replaying in my life is it took me 15 years to finally pull the trigger on my career and say, all right, let's just let it go. I wish I would have done it a whole lot faster. I don't look back on anything that I've done or any of the experiences I've had and say, I regret this or I regret that because it's all led me to right now. I just wish I would have done it faster.
Yeah. Well, hey, it reminds me of this quote, and I don't know who it's by. I'm going to butcher it by paraphrasing it, and not to insinuate that your career to this point was a mistake, but it goes something along the lines of don't hold on to a mistake just because you spent a lot of time making it. So kind of funny there to, see how that...
I like that. I mean, it's kind of along the lines of don't throw good money after bad.
Yeah, right.
The damage has been done. Sometimes you just have to say, okay, I'm going to stop the bleeding and just walk away instead of saying, I'm going to try to solve this problem. There's certain personality types that were very loyal and we just feel like I have to see this to conclusion when the reality is like, no, just stop. It's not that bad. Just walk away.
Yeah, right. Well, Matt, up to this point, you had a great career going for you. It kind of came to an end under some circumstances, outside of your control. Luckily enough, you had, some passive income coming in from a rental portfolio. So at this point, you decide to, jump into this real estate investing thing full time, tried your hand at being an agent, flipping some properties, doing buy and holds. What's your bread and butter right now? What's your business look like on that front?
So these days we've got two companies. One's still the buy and hold portfolio holding company. And the other is the investment company. All of our expenses, all of the lead gen, everything is in the investment side. That's what pays all the salaries for the team and all that kind of stuff. Our main hub is definitely the investment company, but it really all kind of centers around wholesaling. And we will wholesale to ourselves. So if we come across a home run for a flip, we'll flip it. We flipped about 8 houses last year. We'll probably do about the same this year. So we really are not I mean, I've got friends of mine in a mastermind that, they flip 100 houses a year. We're not geared up for that. I don't want to be geared up for that. But if we come across, like I said, a grand slam home run, then yeah, we'll take that down. We'll flip it. But a lot of times what I do is I contact a friend in the area and I say, hey, you're looking for another flip. Here's what I got. We just wholesale the contract to them. If it's something that we're going to hold on to, we really do look at everything through the lens of we're going to buy it and hold it. And we might do the work and then basically hold it. So we actually wholesale to ourselves. And that's really the model is I can get it under contract for price A. I wholesale it to my other company at price B. We make the fee internally on the investment side. And then we hold it, long-term or short-term, depending on what our exit strategy is. And that's really kind of the model. So we really look at everything through the lens of I'm going to buy it all. What I always tell everybody when I get on the phone with people is, if I had Scrooge McDuck money, I would buy everything and keep everything. And so we have a lot of private lenders that work with us. That's really how we take all of our deals down these days is private money. So we really do have and I don't want to say an endless supply of cash. We don't really have that, but we have a lot. And it's a kind of a continual recycling program that we've set up internally that works really nice for us. And so we really do have the money that we need to take down the deals that we want. But if somebody comes into the sphere and says, hey, I'm looking for this or I'm looking for that, and we've got it, whether it's a deal that we just got under contract or it's a deal that we just closed on, or it's a deal that we've owned for a year or two that fits what they're looking for, then we can do a deal together and make money and it's a win-win. That's what we just try to do. At the end of the day, it's all about create win-win situations, no matter what it is.
Sure. That's kind of ultimately your job as a real estate investor is to solve problems for, the people you're dealing with, whether that be sellers, investors, whoever that might be. So, yeah. Well, Matt, what are some of the current projects you're working on? Tell us something exciting that's, on your plate these days.
Well, the interesting thing is, I'm very active on social media and we attract a lot of people that way. We've got a pretty good audience these days out on there. And so I get on the phone with two types of people. The first type is somebody who wants to invest with us, whether it's passively as a private lender or it's actively somebody who wants to own rental property. And so I put those into that category of like the investor category. And then there's people that reach out and they're basically like, hey, I'm starting out in real estate. I'd love to do it. I see you're out there. You're doing big stuff, or at least, on social media. It looks like you're doing big stuff. Can you help me? And up to this point, it was like, I would love to say teaching, coaching, that kind of thing is really where my heart's at. I mean, I really think that that's my unique ability. I got a doctorate just so that I could teach. That's really what I wanted to do. I really kind of feel like I'm gifted in that side. But the thing was, I didn't have time to mentor all of these people that came to me and said, hey, I want to start, would you be willing to help me? And at first I was like, no, because I was very focused on what we were doing. And then some of my friends influencing me, they were like, well, you should create, basically you're going to teach the same thing to the same, to all these different people. And this would give you the opportunity to mentor like a one-to-many kind of a situation, like a classroom type of setup. And so we kind of kicked around the idea of like, how do we do this? How do we do it right? And all that kind of thing. And so we did just recently roll out an info product on how to get into real estate investing with literally no experience whatsoever. And my audience really is the employee who wants to transition, because that's what I've done. That's my experience. And so I love the idea of helping more people do that. And so in catering to that audience, I want to help people go from I got no real estate experience whatsoever to getting my first investment deal done. And going back to this model of who my trying to help is, you're probably on a fixed income, so you don't have a lot of extra cash. And because you have leveraged yourself so dramatically, you probably don't have a lot of credit. How do you get into real estate investing without cash or credit? So we've rolled that out. We've got a support group that comes along with it. It's a Facebook group that we put people in, and it's a nice community that we're building up on there. And so that's kind of our current little side project that we're doing. And I like it because we're being able to help a new audience of people that was coming to us that I was previously having to tell, like, look, I don't have time to do this and I wish I did. And so we've kind of created this to fill that gap that of the people coming to us that this was their need.
Yeah,
and
awesome.
So we're really excited about it because we're getting really good feedback. I mean, we're getting some people that are saying like, well, this changed my life, and this changed my family's lives. There's just really cool stuff. I mean, at the end of the day, you can make all the money in the world, but when you go to bed at night and you lay your head down on the pillow and you think about the fact that somebody told you that you've impacted them positively like that, that's a deposit in the emotional bank that money can't really fill.
Yeah, definitely. So, well, Matt, that's awesome. Let's kind of switch gears and talk about why you've done all you've done and your reasons why, and why you're doing what you're doing. What are your reasons why?
I think it comes back to legacy. First of all, I think I've got an authority problem. I think I've got an authority figure problem. I never really fit in working for somebody else and answering to somebody else. I really do thrive in the environment where I am my own boss and all that kind of stuff. So part of my why is I need to do my own thing. And so this fits with that model. But the other thing too is I really want to provide a life and a lifestyle to my family that I can be happy to give them those things and to do those things, like take cool trips and have really nice experiences and live a first class lifestyle. When I am able to provide that to my wife and kids, that makes me happy. So that's really my why. And I really think it comes down to legacy. I want to create something that I can step back from at some point in time that's going to live on beyond me. So for me, like that does mean I've got to build a team. I've got to build an organization. It's not just me hustling my face off, because at the end of the day, if you're a solopreneur and you're just hustling, you can make a lot of money. I know guys that are out there just hustling. They don't even have an assistant and they're making multiple 7 figures a year. You can do that. But for me personally, like I said, I want to be able to say, like, at the end of the day, I could step back or I could step away and the company is going to continue without me, which means I've created jobs and I've created opportunities for other people that lives beyond, my lifetime, which is cool.
Yeah, well, those are some big reasons why, and keeps you going, and it really keeps that fire lit under you, because we all know in this business, you've got to have something like that, something that keeps you driving and gets you out of bed in the morning. So great stuff. Mm-hmm. Well, Matt, as we're wrapping up here, we've got a lightning round, just a series of questions we'd like to fire at you, and you just answer from the hip. How does that sound?
Sure.
All right, let's do it. Okay, well, the first question we've got is, what was your biggest hurdle getting started investing in real estate, and how'd you overcome it?
I think for me personally, it was myself. I had to get out of my own way. And I think for everybody, the biggest thing that you can overcome is the voice in your head telling you that you can't. And I will say that just by having consistency, that voice starts to quiet down over time. Like I remember having to go into like when I started getting into wholesaling and I did my first deal and I made a 5-figure check, it was like, holy crap, this is amazing. When it came time to do it again, the voice of doubt comes in and you go, you can't do it. And I remember going to the bathroom, looking in the mirror and going like, shut up. It was a little bit more colorful. A little bit more colorful than that. But the thing was, there was a time where I would have to do that like 3 or 4 times a day. And now it's to the point where I might have to do that maybe once or twice a month. And hopefully eventually it's to the point where I really don't have to tell that anymore. I've just got that right mindset dialed in to where I'm out of my own way completely. But for me, my biggest hurdle was me.
Yeah, really good point. Well, Matt, do you have a personal habit that contributes to your success?
I do, and I'm not perfect at it, but I would say it's a morning routine. When I force myself to get up and I do my morning routine, my day, my life, my relationships, my business, everything runs great. It runs smooth. When I don't do that, I feel like I'm very reactive, both at home and at work. And so for me, personal habit is definitely having a solid morning routine.
Yeah, I hear you on that one. It's really important in my daily routine, if you will, I guess, too. So yeah, Good stuff. Matt, do you have an online resource that you find valuable?
That's a good question. I think for me personally, when I was first starting out, this was years ago, and it just started out, was Bigger Pockets, which is an online real estate investing forum site. I think it's a great resource for new investors that want to just get out there, get free content, free information. They've got a very good podcast. So that for me was really great resource when I was first starting. It's not necessarily, I'm still very active on Bigger Pockets myself, but I use it more for using the marketplace, attracting private money, basically running our business. It's a good resource for our business. But for me, good online resources is podcasts. Shows like this, shows like the one that we do, the Bigger Pockets podcast. And then there's lots of really great business podcasts that I listen to. I've got a podcast going or an audio book going pretty much anytime I'm in the car, anytime I'm at the gym. This morning we had snow when I woke up, which was really depressing. But so I'm out there with the snow blower and I got an audio book going or I got a podcast going. So for me, that's a resource that I couldn't give up at this point is podcasts and audiobooks.
Yeah, there's just so many free, great resources out there. Podcasts, Bigger Pockets, just to name a couple, mediums. And yeah, definitely so. Well, Matt, what book would you recommend to the listeners and why?
Well, I got to tell everybody to get my book, don't I?
Well, of course, yes.
So we do give it, we do give it away. It's at manonfirebook.com. You can get it. It's my story. I want to tell it to you. You just throw us a couple bucks for shipping. But aside from the plug, obviously, of my own book, and hopefully you do want to check it out, I would appreciate that. But for me personally, a couple books that really stand out to me as books that were game changers for me is Rich Dad, Poor Dad. If you haven't read that, the Rich Dad series of books are really good. And then probably The 4-Hour Work Week from Tim Ferriss. That book was a total game changer for me. And I remember listening to that as an employee, and the concepts in that book of basically becoming virtual and leveraging virtual assistants and things of that nature, it was totally eye-opening. I'd never even knew that kind of thing was out there. And I started thinking to myself, how could I be virtual as a contractor, like as a construction manager? How could I become virtual? And it was like, well, I think in my industry, people would know if I wasn't there, but it was just it was a neat concept. And we really, as we started our company, we really look at everything from the lens of how could we do this virtual? And we really do have a goal. And I don't know if it'll happen this year or if it'll be next year that we finally achieve it, but we do want to have it be where our company could operate 100% virtual for wherever we are, which would allow my wife and I, and my wife's my COO, so she's our integrator, but allow us to literally travel and be anywhere or be on vacation. And, as long as we've got an internet connection and the laptop, we're good to go.
Yeah, awesome. I love it. Well, Matt, last question here. If you were to give advice to your 20-year-old self to get started investing in real estate, what would it be?
That's great, because that's about when I read that book. So the advice I would personally give myself is you don't need your career and you don't need your job to do real estate investing. You don't need money and you don't need credit. But as more of and that would be me personally, but as more of a broad reaching is just start, pull the trigger, don't wait. Don't be afraid. It's going to work out okay. And if it doesn't, you're going to learn and you're going to achieve what you ultimately want to achieve a whole lot faster than if you wait for the perfect time or the perfect moment or the right amount of money in the bank account. None of that's ever going to happen. So just take action.
Yeah. Great advice. It's so common. Most real estate investors just wish they would have started sooner, started bigger. And, that's just kind of a common thing amongst everybody. So yeah, just get out there, pull the trigger.
Faster.
Yeah, just get the ball rolling and, it'll be okay. So awesome stuff. Well, Matt, it's been a great interview. As we're wrapping up here, is there any parting piece of advice you'd like to leave with the audience?
I would just reiterate what we just talked about. Fail faster. It's, at the end of the day, the worst thing that could possibly happen is that it's a complete disaster. But even in that complete disaster, it's not the end of the world, right? The worst thing that could possibly happen is that you have to file bankruptcy, you lose everything, and you got to start completely over. But you know what? Worse off than, a good percentage of the world, when you consider how great we have it here in the United States compared to lots of other countries and lots of other peoples. Even if you lost it all, you had to start over and your credit was destroyed, you had no money, you've gained tremendous experience that you can build off of and rebuild and do it all again. So there's nothing out there that could possibly happen that would be that detrimental that it's not worth trying.
Yeah, absolutely. Great stuff. Well, Matt, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. So much good conversation, so much good content. For our audience members who are interested in connecting with you, learning more about you, and learning about what you're doing, where's the best place for them to find you?
We're very active on social media, but everything really kind of stems from the hub, which is the website, drmattmotil.com, drmattmotil, MOTIL.com. We've got a blog out there. You can check out both of our podcasts we've got out there. You can get a copy of the book. You can check out the course. We've got stuff on remote real estate investing. We've got what we call the Pissed Off Guide to Financial Freedom, which is really geared towards people that realize that they're stuck in that trap and how do I get out of it? Those are free resources that you can get right out on the website, drmattmotil.com.
Great. Well, thanks for that, Dr. Matt. We will link all that stuff in the show notes, but step one, just go visit www.drmattmotil.com. From there, all kinds of great resources, guides, blogs, podcasts, YouTube videos, just tons of great stuff there. So I recommend everybody to go check it out. Dr. Matt, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been fun.
Thanks. Well, take care.
You too.
All right, that wraps up our interview today with Dr. Matt Motil. Like many people out there listening to this show right now, along with myself, Dr. Matt was raised with the blueprint of go to school, get a good education, and get a good job. And Dr. Matt took that one step further than most people do and got his PhD along with many other certifications like he mentions. Before he found himself midway through his career feeling unfulfilled. Since then, Dr. Matt flipped a switch, started investing for the now, building passive income, and teaching others how they can too. For more information about Dr. Matt, visit www.drmattmotil.com and that will be linked in the show notes. For additional information, resources, blog posts, or if you just want to reach out and connect with me, you can do so at www.jacobayers.com. Till next week, signing off, I'm your host, Jacob Ayers.
You've been listening to the Real Estate Way to Wealth and Freedom podcast, providing you actionable content to build your real estate empire. Nothing on this show should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for personal advice. The opinions of guests are their own. Information is not guaranteed. All investment strategies have a potential for profit or loss. The host is operating on behalf of the Real Estate Way to Wealth and Freedom, LLC, exclusively.